Hello and welcome back. This is a companion video to my garden tour video. What I have here is the Excel file that I use to sort of think through my garden design, and I also have used it to track what is where and my rotation. Uh, Lately I haven't been doing that a lot. I've been traveling a lot for work, so my bride has been doing most of the garden planting. But it's a process that I believe would work. It worked for me when I used it a few years ago, and so maybe it can work for you. Let me talk a little bit about what we have here. If you remember in the garden video, I was standing somewhere in this area. Let me orient you, I guess. So this is my garden design as seen from above. The blue blocks are planting beds made out of wood, uh, and so you can see each one of these blocks is 1 foot in size, so it's 1 square foot. So these beds are 2 feet wide and they're 18 feet long. And so that's this bed, and then these outside beds are my 2 foot wide beds. And then, I've got about 3 feet between those beds and the next set, and these are 3 feet wide by 16 feet long. And then I have a corner that turns a corner here. And then this is the largest, planting space rectangular bed are these uh, 4 by 10 beds in the middle. I do have space, as I talked about in the other video, where I can drive my compact tractor through or lawnmower. If I'm taking a pallet of compost or a pallet of mulch or something like that. Uh, and so to me, this is aesthetically pleasing. It sort of reminds me of an English garden, where you're walking amongst your beds rather than just having a lot of lines and rows. It's I don't know, maze-like, if you will. Around the outside, I have my grape uh, varieties planted, muscadines and then grapes, sort of to make a fence, if you will, around the garden as those grapes grow on. And then anchoring the corners, I have plants. I didn't really want to do corner beds, on each corner. So I have fig plants on 2 corners. I had a gooseberry, it died, and then a aronia berry down here. I did not plant these little plants. My idea here was have a arbor, an arched arbor, and then maybe grow some roses or something across that, just to for the visual appeal. But what you can see is, there is a design to it. It is laid out in 4 grids. And now, what does the grids do for me? One thing to consider in gardening is a crop rotation. And so these grids, in each grid, there's the same amount of planting squares. If you were to get Mel Bartholomew's book, Square Foot Gardening, and read about that, you'd know what I was talking about with squares. So you're planting square foot plots, and so this counts how many squares are in this section, and so there's the same number of squares in each quadrant. And so what that allows me to do is rotate my plantings. So what the plants that are contained in this southeast quadrant, during one planting seasons, the next year will rotate over to the southwest quadrant. So if I have my green beans planted in this garden plot, the next year I'll move them over here, and then I'll follow the green beans with some lettuce or something like that uses that, the nitrogen that the green beans put in the bed. So that's sort of the way that works, and it gives me a natural, uh, I guess a designed in uh, rotation of my crops. And because plant rotations are very important, because what you're doing, some plants pull nutrients out of the soil and other plants put nutrients into the soil, depending on whether you're talking nitrogen or phosphorus or whatnot. And so it's good to maintain that plant crop rotation. And I guess I may do a video about how that works a little later. Other things to consider with your gardening is where is north and what is your sun path. So, this up on this screen is north for me. My sun path would move from what I'm seeing as the right side to the left side. Uh, and so the reason this is important is, if you remember, I have trellises along these beds, and so somewhat, if the sun's not directly overhead, there will be a bit of a shadow cast, and so that's another planting consideration. As you have a trellis, a vertical planting, uh, uh, you could put plants that are next to that in shade. Just by your design, it's not a tree that's causing the shade, but just your planting in the garden itself. And so those are things that you need to consider. Uh, we also mix in flowers and herbs in our garden. Uh, you know, I think I mentioned the basil. Tomatoes and basil go together to eat, but they also grow well together. And so think about that. I have perennials in my garden, not just the grapes and the berry bushes, but these 4 beds, the 3 by 8 beds, 24 squares each. Those are strawberries, and so those beds are pretty much permanently strawberries. Uh, there's no crop rotation. I do have to thin them sometimes, but those are all strawberries. And then I do have in the corner of this bed here, that is where my horseradish is, and so it lives there, and so I do lose that space in my crop rotation. I can't plant what was in this area over in this bed the next year. Uh, so how do I know what I'm planting where? And that's my use of Excel, and that's why I really love it. But down here the tabs, if you look here, main, middle, beds, click that. These are the beds, and so each square has a number, and then I list what's planted and when and that kind of thing. So that's sort of the way that works. There's the center beds, the 4 by 10 beds, and so just this particular year, I had a Canter beans in 1 and 2, and it looks like beans were in these two uh, spaces here. So 1, 2, 11, 12, 21, 22. You see contender beans there, and then when I seeded them, when I started harvesting, that kind of thing. So it's just a planning tool, and this is right now. Currently, it's fall of the year, so fall's the time you need to be thinking about planting, and so you could design your beds, build your beds, and then use a tab to think about where you're going to plant plants. Uh, you know, Plants that grow well together, companion planting, and think about your crop rotation. And so that's sort of the way this works. I really like it. I really like using Excel, uh, and it does well for me. And this is the time of the year to start doing this. So thinking about planting and how are you going to do that? That's what works for me mostly.